think we might do some questions over here. Thank you very much for the information. Dave, I really liked what you just said. Made it simple. And in comparison with Ali, when he presented the charts, you can understand exactly what's happening. So, first item I believe in is making it simple for the electorate to know what they're voting for or what they're getting. The other item I look at is this is the process we're talking about. However, the inputs and the outputs are undefined. The inputs are when the candidate goes in, what are the qualification requirements the gentleman just said. After the person is voted, how are the metrics? What are the accountabilities? What are the performance? And if the person doesn't do the work, if I go to work and doesn't do my work, I get fired. And these, there's no metrics. Once you get hired, you don't know if they're working for the people, are they working for the 1%, are they working for the lobbyists, are they performing for the parties, or are they doing work just for themselves and not for the community. There's no metrics there. People have to get the confidence up that I am going through this process and the results are visible. There's accountability. And that part of the electoral process is missing. That's great to the consumer, and the consumer does not know. So is that going to be reflected in this discussion that that's going to be improved? That's one question I have, and that's missing. About what do you call it, going for a referendum, again, I believe it's education. If there's no education, a referendum is not valid. Only if people are educated on what a referendum is, and it is first past the post. Is the referendum going, what are you going to do? Use the same old method of getting a new process? So that is unknown either. So I believe you've been elected, you got to do a job, do it, and be responsible and accountable for your decisions. That's right. One more.
Yes. Okay, I won't give a big preamble. I'll just go right to my concern. I think we need to revise our voting method for the reasons you've all talked about. But if we go to what seems to be the best method of the ones you've listed here, which is the alternative, basically, it's not so complicated. It's something we can manage, and you can still just vote for one person, and it still works just fine. I've worked as a scrutineer in elections. Probably a lot of people here have worked as scrutineers. And one of the things about being a scrutineer is you realize that our system is honest. I get an exact count of what comes out of that ballot box. I report it back to headquarters. I trust it. We trust our system. So if we modify the system to something with many, many more answers, how are we going to manage the scrutineering? Is it going to be too much for the scrutineers? Is it going to be multiple counts going on behind the scenes? And are we going to trust the results? If we undermine the trust, that's way worse than just leaving the system as it is. Okay? So how would we manage the scrutineering on any of these other methods? Thank you. Professor Wiseman, I'll put it to you. You're a professor.
Well, there have been a number of questions raised. I don't know if you want me to address that one first. I don't think the scrutineering is an issue. We had scrutineers when we had the alternative vote in a number of the provinces. All that happens is you count all the ballots. Nobody's got 50%. You drop the bottom person, and then you redistribute. What will happen is it'll take more time.
Yes.
And it might take a few days to get all the results in.
So the scrutineers are on duty for days?
No, not, well, it depends.
Or they're not
Depends
scrutineering?
Hold it. It depends how big the constituency is and how many MPs you're electing. If you're just electing one person, it's not going to take that long. It's just not the straight count. But if you're electing 10 people in the constituency or 20 people, what will happen is there will be a quota that's created. I don't have to get into it. And then ballots keep being transferred. You don't have to keep sitting there for days. You can take a break at 8 o'clock and then reassemble at 8 o'clock in the morning if you want. So it might take 2-3 days, but it'll happen fairly recently.
I just want, my point is that it has to be thought through because we implemented a system without thinking this through. Because recognize when I'm scrutineering, I'm looking at one poll box or 2 poll boxes. I'm not covering all the others. Are you going to balance each box or are you going to get them all together, then balance them? And then, so where's all the scrutineers? It's a logistical problem.
Yes, and we do have this system in many other countries, and they seem to handle it. Now, on voter turnout and Dave's point about it going down, and it's look, after the Soviet Union broke up, voter turnout was very high in Eastern European countries. It was also very high in Africa after decolonization, because people identified voting with prosperity. And then after a few elections, they noticed things didn't change much. So now voter turnout has gone down dramatically in those countries. So high voter turnout, you know, to me, it's not all that significant. How have alternative electoral systems worked in the OECD? I'm not an expert in comparative politics, but in some countries in the OECD, and they're somewhere between 34 and 36, it works. You know, in Belgium, it took them 353 days to form a government. After the election in 2010, no party had gotten more than 20% of the vote. Next door in Germany, it's not a problem. They have stable majority governments made up of more than one party. So you can have stable governments. It's just one party doesn't have a majority, but 2-3 parties can get together and it's stable. So, I beg your pardon?
After that election, there was more than 12 weeks.
In Belgium or in Germany? Okay, so it can happen there too, but generally it hasn't been an issue there, or Denmark, or generally in the Nordic countries. But again, I say, how often has that happened in Germany in all of the elections they've had? So, okay. Another factor is going to be in Israel, which was mentioned. One of the reasons we had so many parties is because when they initiated their system, all you had to do is, I believe, get 0.5% of the vote to get representation in Parliament. In Germany and New Zealand, it's 5%. So that's a bar. If you think you're going to have too many parties, you can raise it. I think much, much, much more important than the electoral system about how things will work afterward is the underlying political culture, the underpinnings of the society. So a country like Canada, the dangers, we can't compare Canada to Belgium. Yes, linguistically, there are differences, but we're a huge country. One of the challenges, if you have a very proportional system, is what if we get a BC First Party? Yeah, they know they can't win the election, but hey, BC has a large number of seats in the House of Commons. I don't know, 12, 14%. They can hold the balance of power and end up being the tail that wags the dog. So we have a lot of geography, and that's a factor that comes into play. About measuring MPs' performance, I don't think this has anything to do with the electoral system, with respect. I mean, as it turns out, from what I can make out, the thing that MPs are most focused on are immigration issues. And you can, Ali is, I think, nodding. Some MPs are more interested in policy issues, some are just really constituency people. It varies, and you know, it's up to the constituents to decide if they want that person to stay in or not. Some people, in fact, I'd say more people, don't care who the local candidate is. They care about the leader of the party or the party itself. So they vote Liberal no matter who's on the ballot. A lot of the people, I think, that voted for Ali, the first time they found out Ali was the Liberal was when they got to the ballot box. They knew that they were going to vote Liberal or they wanted Trudeau. And I think that exists. I'm not taking anything away from you, Ali, but I think Trudeau is better known. Okay, I've gone on.
Well, just the one question to me was those comparative countries, like that gentleman up there, and mostly in Europe, but elsewhere in the Commonwealth, how they perform with systems that fairly represent the preferences of the people. You notice how I avoid the word proportional because it sort of sounds technical. And they've done pretty well. There's a very good book by a man called Cary Strong that I drew a lot on. And to save you reading the book, you can read just my chapter about the performance of minority governments elsewhere. And his book is called Minority Government and Majority Rule. That's interesting, isn't it? And how can he title his book Minority Government and Majority Rule? Because in the countries that have minority government, and we certainly saw this in Ontario very much from 1974 to 81, we saw it again in Harper's first year, we saw it very much in Ottawa in the middle of the 60s. When minority governments really start working, they reach out to other people in the other parties in the parliament. They begin to adopt ideas that other parties brought into the legislature, or to modify their own policies somewhat to meet the views of other people. And you get policies that really represent majority preferences in the country. So minority government gives you majority rule. Kerry, like me, is a little hard on coalitions. Canada, for Nelson's reason, when you form a coalition, it usually doesn't take anything like 6 weeks, but the negotiating between the parties that go into the coalition, and this was very clear with the last one in England, with Clegg and Cameron. The negotiating, the trade-offs on policy all go on behind closed doors. In a minority government situation, and I think Harper's first year was just a model of this happening, the party that had a plurality in the House, his party, had to make deals with various parties just to survive and get policies done. On foreign policy, they went with the Liberals on Afghanistan. On economic and social policy, they went with the NDP. On fiscal equalization, they went with the Bloc of all people. In other words, they reached around in the House of Commons to find legislators who had somewhat different views from their own, but they could be accommodated issue by issue. And I find that a wonderfully vibrant parliament, if you like. And his book, Cary Strong's book, it's just being updated, gives you a good insight. He has another word for it. It means the policy is more inclusive. It's a more inclusive way of making policy in the parliament.
Let's give some quick responses here. You mentioned the Lego, and someone mentioned make it simple, keep it simple. So I do have a project called Lego My Vote, and I handed out some of these postcards. There's a few lying around. If you go to unlockdemocracy.ca, I do explain the different voting systems using Lego, which is a great educational tool. In terms of tracking MPs, I agree it's not really related directly to voting reform, but it is an important issue. There is a website called openparliament.ca. It's a great website. You type in your postal code, it tells you who your MP is, it shows their Twitter feed, it shows their votes, it shows their speeches on the Hansard. It can send you automatic emails every time your MP speaks in Parliament, etc. The sad thing is that MPs don't have a lot of independence these days. They vote the party line. We have one of the most centralized Westminster models around in terms of MP compliance with the party line. I think that's really tragic. Can we trust how the system will work in terms of how the scrutineers will count the ranked ballots? I agree. Like, countries are doing this. It works. Will it be more complicated? Yes. Is it worth it? Absolutely. We can't let those logistical details sway our decision of what system we should use. You figure out the logistics afterwards. All these systems are tried, tested, and true. And in terms of someone asked what's the most predominant system within the OECD or within the world, it's some form of proportionality. There's lots of different ways to do it, but the predominant system being used, all of Europe pretty much, except for France and the UK, is using some form of proportionality. And even those countries use proportionality to elect their EU seats, at least England is for not this week. In terms of the voting age going down to 14, I would actually go down to 13 for boys and 12 for girls. That's the bar mitzvah years, and it works great. It acknowledges that females mature earlier than men, which is true. I still haven't matured, and I'm 41. I wanted to mention that Alberta right now has a fake NDP government, and that's what I forgot to mention before when I was going on my tangent about Kim Campbell, and how right now, yes, it seems that voting reform is a benefit to the left because the right has merged and the left is always accused of splitting the vote. But if you look at Alberta, most Albertans voted center-right. They voted for conservative parties and got stuck with the fake majority NDP government. So all parties really benefit from a fair system. First past the post screws everyone over eventually. And don't think it's a right-wing thing or a left-wing thing. In terms of the one-to-one relationship between you and your MP, I would argue that in a multi-member district, which is what the STV model proposes, single transfer vote, you actually, I know this sounds counterintuitive, you have more chance of having a healthy one-to-one relationship with your MP if you have 4 or 5 or 6. Because for example, right now in Toronto, every MP is a Liberal. That's crazy. Lots of Torontonians voted NDP, lots voted Conservative. If you're a Conservative in downtown Toronto, you have a one-to-one with someone that you totally disagree with. And forget about going all 25 in one riding. Cut Toronto into 4 sections, roughly based on the community councils. So North York becomes a riding with 6 or 7 MPs. 1 will be Conservative, 3 or 4 will be Liberal, 2 or 3 will be NDP, maybe even a Green, because strategic voting is gone, right? Peter likes that. Now, sure, it's confusing. I have 7 MPs instead of 1, but the chance of one of them actually being aligned with your views is exponentially higher. So I think the multi-member districts increase the local representation, not decrease. And lastly, I just wanted to say that the online voting in Markham, according to Markham's press release, raised their voter turnout not from 27 to 30, but from 28 to 38.
That's first election.
Maybe it was the next one, I'm not sure. But there was a press release saying it went up 10%. I don't know. But I think I still think that the potential benefits outweigh the cons for online voting.
Thank you. In deference to the speakers, can we just have people just have quick questions so we can get around to all the questions that are being asked? Do you want to go first?
Sure. About online voting, I just want to remind everybody about what just happened to Britain about BRICS and how they come out of without people knowing. I don't know if you heard of it. They said the first question people asked is, what is EU? And they already voted. So I think one of the problems with online voting is people did not take the time to educate themselves, to know about what's happening really. If you are taking your time to go to a ballot and vote, means that you care. I think this is important that we think about people who care. They spend their time, they come to the ballot and vote. Other things I want to say is, I want to know what is your view about the people who become new Canadians. As a new Canadian, I'm just informing you that it's not much out there to know about what is the previous system, what is the new system. There's lots of language barrier. There are many people are afraid. I knocked the doors recently, and many people say, I don't want to talk about politics. There are many people who doesn't want to talk about anything. When you talk about politics, they close the door on you. So how's the plan to bring new Canadian who doesn't know about the history as much? They just pass a test to become a Canadian, and there's not much information. How do you want them to bring to vote? And if this new system gonna think of how to bring them back to vote, not thinking only of liberal, conservative, or just parties just going more details and acknowledge themselves about what's happening. Thank you.
First off, please.